Welcome back to This Week in Film. It's the weekly podcast where we get together and talk about the movies we've seen over the past week. I'm Nick Panunto, joined as always by Midwest Matt Lauer. Matt, it's another week. How are you?
I am doing all right. How are you, Nick?
I'm doing good. We watched some movies this week. Would you like to talk about them?
Yes, I would. But before we do, I want to make a correction.
Oh, okay.
Yes, in last week's episode, wait, was it last week that I talked about the Meg? I'm going to go with yes.
Yes.
In last week's episode, I said that the Meg, aside from like Jason Statham and a couple other people, starred a Chinese actress named Bingbing Li. And that was because I looked things up on IMDb to get all my names right, which apparently was not a good idea. Her name is Li Bingbing. So I apologize on behalf of myself to Li Bingbing and not Bingbing Li. That whoever that is, they're not famous enough. So
you've embarrassed the show, and I'm not sure we'll ever recover.
Oh, I also apologize to Nick Panunto for ruining his show. and all the listeners, because I'm sure they're torn. They were
like, who is Bingbing Li?
Damn it, I thought this starred Li Bingbing. I'm not going to the theater.
We were contacted by somebody on Twitter. I don't have their name. But the Meg was based...
Oh, sorry. I thought you were talking about something else. Keep going.
But that the Meg is based on a series of books, which is astounding.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to read these.
Oh, speaking of books, before we get into this week's, we were talking about Annihilation a couple weeks ago, and I got the book for it that it was based on.
Yeah.
And I'm 2 pages into it. Just kind of like went into it a little bit, and it is drastically different than the movie. like immediately, it's so different from the movie that I'm like, I'm not going to get any answers.
Yeah, you might not.
Yeah.
But you'll get other stuff. I don't know, how's the experience of reading the first couple pages?
So far it's a bunch of words put together in a story.
So it doesn't already strike you as like strange writing.
Like I'm literally on page 2. Like I had a couple minutes to kill, so I was just flipping through it, and I was like, oh, this is drastically different from the word go.
I guess I was just kind of curious if it hits you immediately that it's a weird book, but I guess not.
It's in first person, which I enjoy. It's like a Chuck Palahniuk, however you say it.
Palahniuk?
Yeah, that's it.
Nobody knows.
The guy who wrote Fight Club. Most of his books are written in first person, and I really like that. But so I'm only 2 pages into the Area 51 trilogy, or Area X, whatever it's called,
or the Southern Reach trilogy.
Yeah, there you go.
That's
so that was 2 weeks ago in film.
Yeah, but, listeners, be prepared, because this conversation about Annihilation may never end. I remember after our last time talking about it, there were like 5 other things that popped into my head, and I was like, I want to talk to Nick about those. This show could just be called the Annihilation Podcast for a while.
We should start our own at the Annihilation Minute show so we can just keep talking about it.
Oh, yeah, it'd just be like a segment.
Yeah.
Like, we get a little theme music, be like in Annihilation Corner.
Yeah.
We can just call it Area X. And over in Area X...
this week in Area X.
Yeah. So,
yeah, so anyway, on to this week in film. We watched 3 movies. I watched 2 movies. You watched 2 movies as well.
I watched 3 movies.
Oh. Well, what did you watch?
Well, I'm not going to have much to say about 2 of them because I think I watched Twister and I watched The Lost Boys. And I think I've talked about The Lost Boys on here in full once and maybe just mentioned it a bunch of other times. And we did a whole commentary track on Twister, which if you haven't listened to that.
Yeah, it's very entertaining.
Says us.
Yeah. What made you watch Twister again?
I was hanging out with a good friend of mine, and we just decided we've been watching what's that show? Twin Peaks.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like the original. We haven't gotten through it enough to watch the new ones, but
did the new ones come out already?
Oh yeah, they were on Showtime a couple months ago, I think.
Oh, okay. I've never seen Twin Peaks, but it's one of those things that I've always wanted to watch, but have never been ready.
Yeah. Well, it's a pretty weird experience, and we kind of tore through the first season very quickly, and that was about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago. And then we got into the second season, which apparently, if my information is correct, which based on Bing Bing Lee, it might not be. The second season wasn't so much in David Lynch's hands anymore. Like, he kind of went, all right, you guys can keep this going. I wasn't really planning on doing a whole lot more story here anyway. And the second season has a pretty different feel. It's a very weird show, which is, kind of a given when you're talking about David Lynch.
Did the movie, The Fire Walk with Me movie, come out first, or is that after the show?
I think that was somewhere after the first two seasons, that initial run. And I think there's even some other movie that's also a Twin Peaks like franchise piece.
Oh, really?
I think so. I feel like I recently heard a list of a bunch of different things, and it's like, and here's all this Twin Peaks stuff, and I was like, oh, I didn't even realize some of these other things existed. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was one of those things. It's like a making of, but it's just got its own title, like that.
Sure.
And I haven't seen Firewalk with Me. But I mean, Twin Peaks, that first season is quite the experience. I don't know you to be someone who does drugs. If you binge it at all, you might start to think you're doing drugs, because it's pretty weird. And really great to just watch and be like, what is going on? This is insane. So anyway, so we have been trudging our way through the second season, and we were going to hang out and knock out a few episodes, because the first season I think is a bit shorter. The second one's got like 22 or some odd amount of episodes, and I think we're on like episode 14. So they're like, yeah, we'll knock out a few episodes, and then she came over and we're like, you know what? Let's not. let's watch The Lost Boys. And then somewhere in the midst of that, she was like, blah blah blah, Twister, and said also, I know you have a friend who now they can like start a little club together and get a little protection. You have a friend whose favorite movie is Twister.
Yeah, that's right.
And my friend also said, for the longest time, Twister was undoubtedly, like, officially my favorite movie. And so she's not alone. So what was your friend's name? Christine?
Yeah, that's right. Christine,
you're not alone. So, and I gotta say, like, I completely enjoyed it. Both movies, Lost Boys and Twister. Now, this is the second time this year that I've seen Twister, and the third time this year that I've seen The Lost Boys. So, nostalgia and cheesy movie enjoyment.
Yeah.
Although I gotta say, with Lost Boys, every time I see The Lost Boys, I actually decide that it's more and more and more a good movie, like a well-written movie. There are a couple lines that are kind of weird. Like, I even went back and turned the subtitles on for one point where they're about to kill some vampires. Spoiler alert, there are vampires in The Lost Boys. And Corey Haim is like talking to Corey Feldman. Corey Feldman's about to stake a vampire through the heart. And he goes, "Don't even." And what does that mean? Am I hearing this wrong? So I turned on the subtitles, and it's like, nope, it just says "don't even." And that's something I'm used to people saying when somebody's, getting ready to smart off with them or something, and they're like, "Hey, you know what? Don't even," and kind of like talk to the hand.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea what it means in this context, and I feel like the line maybe like it's supposed to be interrupted, but it's not. Like, there might have even been a dash in the subtitles. But then, like, he says "don't even," and then there's a 2-second pause, and then they stake a vampire. But aside from...
Maybe it's supposed to be like an as if.
I don't think it works there. You'll have to watch The Lost Boys, and you'll enjoy it to see. But other than that, and maybe like one or two other kind of strange lines, that movie's hilarious. And I don't know, man. I think as a kid, I just enjoyed it. But as an adult, I'm like, it's kind of like Scream. Where I'm like, whoever put this together... And I know Joel Schumacher directed it, but like whoever...
He's one of history's greatest monsters.
Yeah. But looking back on it, and I just kind of go like, whoever assembled this did a really good job of balancing out the humor with the way the story kind of comes together. The ridiculousness is fun, and the vampires are actually pretty cool. So anyway,
what is Lost Boys about?
Lost Boys is about so you've got two brothers and their mom post divorce, their parents divorced, going out to Santa Clara, I think, California. It's a made up city, and they're going out to live with their mom's dad. And whilst there, they discover that there are some vampires in the area. One of the brothers is kind of involved with these guys before he kind of realizes what's going on. And Corey Haim meets up with Corey Feldman. So you've got the two Coreys, on screen together doing their thing. Corey Feldman's talking with a extra deep voice the whole time. It's like, yeah, everything we say is super serious, but it's all pretty tongue in cheek, so it works well. Kind of made me realize, like, it's a shame that Corey Haim, went off the rails and ended up passing away early, because he was actually pretty decent. Like his comedic, his facial gestures and comedy worked pretty well. Mm-hmm. So anyway, the vampire plot kind of comes out, and they end up fighting vampires.
This movie is when the Coreys were at the top of their game, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. And I looked it up because I was talking to my friend about the Corey phenomenon. I was like, oh yeah, it was a thing. And it looked like they did maybe like 6 movies together.
Yeah. I don't think I've seen any of them.
Well, I saw this one, License to Drive.
That's supposed to be a pretty good movie.
I saw it a bunch of times when I was a kid. I'm hesitant to say it's good because, sometimes you go back to the well and realize that the water's pretty tepid. But it was enjoyable then. So if you were to watch it and say, yeah, that was actually pretty funny, I wouldn't be too surprised.
All right. Have to check it out, I guess. So what else happens in Lost Boys? What happens next?
They fight the vampires. And I skipped over something really important because if you ever see this movie, you're gonna never get this out of your head, and it's gonna be, probably the thing you think of when you think of the Lost Boys. There's a dude at the beginning of the Lost Boys playing a saxophone,
which is your most hated instrument.
That's true. And man, is it some oiled up beefcake action right there. So it's like purple spandex wrestler pants and a big greasy bodybuilder body and some curly Jerry curled sort of hair. And he's just, I don't know, man, they're all rocking out on the beach, and it's an image that can burn in your head. So everybody look forward to Saxophone Man.
So like,
oh yeah, and Kiefer Sutherland's in it. You should know that because people really like him now. So
that's back when he looked real weird.
Weird.
Yeah, like the way he looks is like how he looks in isn't he? He's the bad guy in Stand By Me, right?
Oh yeah, like the tough street thug,
like the super blonde hair, and he looks like he has crazy eyes and stuff.
Yeah, a little bit of that like pink around the eyes. It's like maybe he's on some sort of drug.
So
with his face.
It's been so long since I've seen Lost Boys, but the vampires want Jason Patric to join them. Is that right?
Yeah. They're looking to sort of recruit the older brother, who is played by Jason Patric. And for listeners, if you don't know who Jason Patric is, that's probably just means you haven't seen The Lost Boys, because he's not in a whole lot else. He's in Speed 2, Cruise Control, but like...
I was just about to say
that. He's not exactly a big name. But he fits in the movie. I mean, everybody in this movie is like perfectly cast. And there are two dogs in this movie, and they're both incredible. Like, I don't even mean like dog acting. I'm just like, I want these dogs. These are the coolest looking dogs. And so they're trying to sort of recruit him, and throughout the movie, you're seeing a lot of family dynamics, and you're seeing a lot of mystery in terms of like, well, how's this vampire thing work? But it's something that I would heartily recommend to anyone who likes humor in their horror.
Uh-huh.
And I wouldn't hesitate at all to say watch that movie. It holds up so well.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, it is. And that's all I got on that. So
yeah.
That's Lost Boys.
All right.
Twisters about tornadoes. There you go.
Yeah, we went deep in the Twister like a couple months ago. So just go back to the episode special commentary track on Twister, where we watched the whole movie together.
Good times.
So then that brings me to the movie that I watched this week.
What'd you watch, Nick?
I watched a movie called Under the Skin, which is from 2013. It is directed by Jonathan Glazer and stars Scarlett Johansson. And this
does
movie...
it also... Wait, hang on. You might need to clarify this in the notes, because I want to check and make sure on something.
Uh-huh.
Does it also include... And like I said, you might want to clarify this for the fans when you write up the show. Does it also include Mandy Moore, Britney Spears, Justin Timberlake, Kesha, Sia, Miley Cyrus, or who's that kid I want to punch in the face? Justin Bieber?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't feature any of those awesome celebrities that we now have to tag in the episode.
Good to know, because I wouldn't want to watch it expecting it to be
right. No, but it does star Scarlett Johansson, and I hated this movie. I hated it so much. It sucked. It was so bad. It was so bad and so boring. And here's what it's about. So I have no idea. It was an hour. It was an hour and 50 minutes, and it's a movie where it's like, make up your own plot to this. So here's what the IMDb description for it says. Mysterious young woman seduces lonely men in the evening hours of Scotland. However, events lead her to begin a process of self-discovery. Right? So that kind of happens. So the movie starts off with...
Wait, so you're watching an alien find itself?
I guess it's supposed to be an alien. They don't tell you. The movie gives you no information. It gives you no information about anything. Like as you're watching it, it like goes along. You're like, oh well, they're definitely going to explain this, right? Nope. They never explain anything, and it's so bad. And it's got a lot of nudity, a lot of erect penises, and yeah, like a lot of wang. And
you tend to see a lot of wang in a non-pornographic movie,
and fully erect too. So like that was disturbing, because she seduces these men, like she brings them back to her shacks all over Scotland, and like she starts to strip down, and the men also strip down when they walk towards her. And they like just slowly, I guess they're like hypnotized or under like a spell of her, and they slowly,
sort of a ritual.
No,
like it follows a real specific pattern each time.
Oh yeah, it's exactly the same each time. Like she seduces a guy to come back to her crappy house, and inside the house it's completely black, and she's walking about 10 paces ahead of them, and she's taking off her clothes, and so then the guy also takes off his clothes and reveals the giant wang, and and then the guy slowly walks into this black water, and then she's standing on top of the water, and the man sinks below, and then he's like captured, and and for like an hour and a half you don't know what happens. You're like, what is going on? And then they show one guy under the water, and he's under the water, under the black water or whatever, and he's just kind of like floating there, penis still fully erect, and he just
these must be some gargantuan penises, because it seems like this has really thrown you.
You don't expect to see it. And then and so then he's like floating in this blue water, because underwater it's all blue, and it looks like they're freezing to death.
All right.
But they're not. And like there's the one scene that they show under it. It shows like this, and I'm going to spoil the hell out of this movie because I hated it. There's the only time they show you what's happening under the water. There's like the guy who's just captured, and a guy who was captured a while ago. And the guy who was captured a while ago looks like his skin is all loose on his body, and then he pops like a balloon, and then that's it. And that's it. That's all the information you get about what's going on underneath the black water. And you're like, okay, I got nothing from that. And so then the movie continues. Like there's like a real pattern at the beginning of the movie. For about the first 45 minutes, it's her driving around in this giant van, picking up guys, until she picks up this guy who looks like he's got this real horrible deformity on his face, and like he must have like elephantitis or something of the face, and she seduces him, and after she gets him to walk into the black water, she's leaving the house, and she looks at a mirror, and she stares at the mirror for like 3 minutes. It's 3 minutes of her just looking at a mirror, and then she like leaves, and then the next scene, the mutant man is like leaving the house, like he got out somehow, and so I guess that's supposed to mean that Scarlett Johansson's trying to figure something out about herself, because from that point on, the movie totally changes from her doing the driving around, picking up guys and capturing them, to her wanting to go eat cake.
Huh?
Yeah. There's like this whole 5-minute sequence of her going to a restaurant to eat cake. And then and the only thing I can think of is that the only reason that they show her, and I'm not kidding, that she stares at this mirror for 2 to 3 minutes. Like there's such long, drawn out scenes. This movie could have been easily half an hour. And so the only thing I think of is that when she's been in this human body for so long that she's starting to forget that she's an alien, and she's starting to think that she's human. And so that's what happens when she's looking at the mirror. She starts to question who she is, I guess. And
so she's sort of going like, hey, wait a minute, maybe I'm a human now.
Maybe
I'm really starting to take this in. You know what? Humans eat cake. I'm going to start doing that.
Yeah, so she goes to this restaurant and goes to eat cake, and then spits it out. And that's the end of that scene. And then she like is walking around, and she makes friends with this guy at a bus stop, who then takes her home. And she is acting like she's mentally incapacitated, like she's got some sort of mental illness.
Okay.
And the guy that takes her home is nice enough about it. Like he's like, "Do you need help?" And she's like, "Yes." And he takes her home, and they like watch some old TV show together. They eat beans and bread, and
better than cake for her,
I guess. And then the next day they go to this old, like, the movie takes place in Scotland, and they go to this old Scottish castle, and then for about 5 minutes you watch her struggle to walk down the steps because she's scared. And
of steps?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And then they go home back to his house where they proceed to start making out. And all you can think is the whole time that they're making out is this guy is trying to have sex with this mentally challenged girl that he found on a bus.
Yeah.
And the only thing I can think about at this point, the movie changes from her being like a sexual predator on men to men becoming a sexual predator to her, and her trying to escape it. Because
is she not interested?
Well, she's interested in the guy, like the guy from the bus stop. Like they're about to have sex, and just as he's about to like seal the deal, she like freaks out and just starts looking at her downstairs parts, and the guy's like, "Are you all right?" Like he's like, "Well, let's get on with it." and then like the next scene is just her running through the woods, and then while she's in the woods, she comes across this park ranger guy who talks to her for 5 minutes about how big the park is. He's like, it's like, this is a giant park. You know, you could find a lot of solitude here. No one will ever bother you. It's a big park. And you're like, what the hell is going on? Why is this guy talking for so long? And then the next scene, she finds this built like a cabin in the forest that's for like people to take shelter during rainstorms, and she goes in there and she goes to sleep, and she wakes up and the park ranger guy is molesting her, and she fights him off and runs away, and while she's running away, the guy is able to catch up to her, where he begins to like attempt to rape her in the forest. And he looks so bored while trying to do this, like he's chewing gum or whatever, and he's like ripping her clothes off, and she's fighting back for a second, and then she stops fighting back, and then the guy like flips her over and accidentally tears her skin off, and underneath is like this black body, and the guy's like, "Oh, that's creepy," and he runs away, and she stands up, and like her back is like torn open. And then she like pulls her face off, like her whole head. She pulls it all off, and underneath is like this black ebony alien body that is like looking at the face. And then the rapist guy comes back with a can of gasoline, throws the gasoline on her, and lights her on fire, and the movie ends. The end.
All right.
Yeah.
So the pitch meeting for this must have gone something like, Scarlett Johansson takes off her clothes. We'll fill in the details later.
Basically, yeah. It's a lot of naked Scarlett Johansson, but it's the least sexy naked stuff. It's
sure.
It's completely unerotic, and I think that's deliberate, which is fine. Because like all the nudity with the men is not sexy either. I wasn't into it, and
just sort of creepy and weird, right?
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of the point. Like they're trying to desexualize this seduction stuff, but the movie is so full of itself, like these long, drawn out shots of like scenery, and it just seemed like they were trying to pad the movie out to an hour and a half, because there's just these long sequences of nothing happening, and the story does not tell you anything.
I mean, from what you said, it sounds like it's trying to be in some way like sort of like a woman trying to explore herself and sexuality and figure out what she sort of is, and then finding out what she is to men instead, and like kind of like, oh yeah, you're trying to figure out you and your own feelings. Well, guess what? Men, they're gonna be trying to do stuff to you. And
yeah.
I think if you're actually looking for something like that, some sort of commentary on sexuality and especially like female objectification, the movie It Follows does it really brilliantly.
I heard good things about that.
It's also just a really good horror movie.
Yeah, this movie was not good. It was really bad, and and I'd heard good things about it too, like that it was a good movie. So I was kind of excited to watch it. I'd been putting off watching it forever because I knew it was going to be heady. Like you're going to have to think about it a lot, but it was so boring. It is so boring.
Huh. Well, and that seems like just knowing you and some movies we've talked about in the past, and you enjoying like psychological thrillers. To hear you say you were bored with something that sort of seems to fall in that realm.
Yeah.
Says to me, I am not going to bother.
I mean, the movie doesn't give you, like I said, it doesn't give you any information about anything. There's this one character who rides a motorcycle the whole time, and it seems like his job is to collect the bodies that Scarlett Johansson leaves behind, but they don't explain it at all. Like the movie doesn't help you at all with any information. Like you basically like create your own story based on what you're watching. Like make it up yourself because we're not going to tell you.
Does it strike you as sort of like an art house film?
Oh, absolutely. The movie does have some really cool visuals, like a lot of light and dark. Like there's this like the sequences when she's seducing the men in the house where they're getting swallowed by the water. They're gorgeous. Like it looks amazing. And then the beginning of the movie, where it seems like where she gets her body from, is shot on this it's like shot in full white, like white background, and everything she's doing is in silhouette, and it's gorgeous. But for the most part, the movie's kind of bland looking, except for when you're doing the alien stuff. And I guess that's what she's supposed to be, is an alien. But they don't give you any information about it. You know, like they don't tell you like why she's there or what she's doing with the men, other than the men when they're under the black ooze. After a while, they pop like balloons, which was surprising to see. I did not expect that to happen.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to take this one as a recommendation.
No, I would say, actually, I would recommend watching it for 10 minutes and then. Like I said to you last night.
And then sending you a text saying, yeah, this movie's whack.
Right. Watch it for 10 minutes and then think, oh, they must explain this stuff. They have to explain what's going on. And then just realize that, no, they don't. They don't explain anything.
You know, it's funny to hear you talk about this after talking about Annihilation, because that obviously left you with a lot of questions, but you also super enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's interesting like that, because at least with Annihilation, the stuff that they don't explain comes late, like or it's surrounded by what am I trying to say? So the stuff that happens in Annihilation is pretty vague, and you have to like you almost create your own story, but at least stuff is always happening in the movie. Like there's like when they come across the different flowers that are mutated and stuff, you can think, oh, well, what's happening is like this alien creature is creating like a cancer in the world, and it's mutating everything, and sometimes it turns beautiful and sometimes it turns into that horrible bear monster. And and so like you can extrapolate from there, but this movie doesn't give you anything. It just gives you these visuals and no story, and you're just supposed to take your own imagination and try and create your own story based on it. Like there's this guy on the motorcycle shows up for like half the movie, and they don't explain anything that he's doing. Like, how is he an alien too, and they're both working together, or does he work for the aliens, or what's his deal? And they don't give you anything.
Yeah. I think with Annihilation, you're left with some gaps to fill in your mind, but you're not filling in the backbone of everything. And it sounds like what you're saying here is like, you're kind of looking for the structure and the overall, even what's not just answering specific questions, but just the overall, like, what's even the main theme here.
Yeah. I mean, there's one part in Under the Skin where she's walking down the street, and she's just walking, and then she stumbles for some reason, and and like lands on her stomach and is just laying there for 45 seconds. For 45 seconds, she's just laying there while people are around her going like, "Miss, are you okay? Are you okay, lady? Are you okay?" And it's just like this close up of her face next to the ground. And it's just forever of her just laying there. And then finally she gets up and just walks away.
Huh. Sounds like a lot of time in this movie is spent with the character processing. You don't really know what she's even thinking.
Yeah, like you're just trying, like most of the movie I thought, oh, she's like some sort of robot, but she's not. Or is she? I don't know. Still don't know. Like, I guess she's some kind of alien. Although at the end of the movie, when she takes her face off, that was a really cool visual effect. I enjoyed that a lot.
I'll check it out on YouTube.
Yeah. That's probably the best way to watch this movie. Watch it in 5-minute clips.
Will do.
So that was Under the Skin. Not a recommend, except for 10 minutes. Watch it for 10 minutes and then
go back to your life.
Yeah. Don't watch it for 10 minutes and then just assume they tell you what happens, because they don't.
All right.
Well, then that brings us to our next movie, which we both watched.
Yay.
Hardcore Henry.
Yeah. Actually, before we go into this,
Yeah.
2 quick things. Just observations I had while searching for a movie to watch. How fast movies are coming out. Because I saw that Tag, the movie Tag, where the guys are all playing a game of tag that lasts for 20 years or whatever.
Oh, yeah? You saw that?
No, but it's already available to rent.
Oh, wow.
Like, I felt like I literally, maybe within the last week, was thinking I might take my girlfriend to see that, because it kind of strikes her funny bone. That's sort of her some of the kind of humor she likes. And I was like, all right, we could do that if it's still out. And I was like, it's probably not out anymore. I'm not sure it's a movie that would keep itself in the theater very long.
Right.
And then I saw that it's available to rent. I'm like, well, guess not.
Wow, that movie did just come out.
Didn't it?
It feels like it did. Yeah, that beginning of the summer. But like Avengers is already on DVD.
Yeah, that's true. And that was just in theater still a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
I saw that Ant-Man and the Wasp is still in the theaters. I thought that was ridiculous. Deadpool 2 is already out.
Oh, is it? I'll have to watch that
Yeah.
again. I'd like to see that again.
There's you might have to, depending on what service you're using, you might have to buy it. I just canceled my cable and then added HBO through Amazon. And this is a plug that I would usually do at the end of the show.
Right.
Hey, folks out there.
Get some of that sweet Amazon money.
In this case, maybe a little HBO money too. Everybody, cancel your cable.
Yeah.
We're going to lose that Comcast money. And use your Amazon account, which you should have if you don't already. Get yourself some Amazon Prime. And then you can add all sorts of different channels just through that. So, like, I think for like $14 a month now, I have HBO, which is like $40 less than the cable that I've ever used.
Yeah, we canceled our cable last summer, and I have not missed it at all, because we barely watch. The only thing I watch on TV is sports, and
Yeah, I literally, since moving out to the suburbs, have watched on cable. I watched one thing ever.
Yeah.
It was a game of football, and that was it. So I was like, this is... it was fine for a while, because, the deal was like that part wasn't part of the charges. It didn't cost any more than HBO would. But then the offers expire and stuff. Anyway... That's where I saw
so that
that
free commercial for Amazon is for free. Enjoy that free ad.
And go ahead and get yourself some whatever station you like on Amazon, because it's a pretty cool deal. So anyway, stuff's coming out really quickly. And then I also noticed something earlier in the day, because in addition to seeing the movies I also saw about an hour of Constantine.
Oh, Constantine's awesome.
Dude, such an underrated movie. And I keep hearing people like it keeps popping. I listen to a lot of podcasts and watch a lot of like Google or YouTube reviews of movies and stuff.
Uh-huh.
It seems like every time this movie's referenced, it's referenced as a bad movie.
I can't believe that.
I know.
We saw Constantine in theaters together, and remember we went to go see it because we thought it was going to be bad. Like we were like, let's go see this terrible Keanu Reeves movie, and it was amazing.
Yeah, we walked out pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
And I've seen it a couple times since, like maybe 2 or 3 times since, and enjoyed it every time. Uh-huh. And since hearing all these reviews and seeing it referenced as something bad all the time, I was like, I'm not sure. Maybe I'm missing something. So I watched about an hour of it with my girlfriend before I went to work.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, hey, you know what? I'm not going to be able to watch the whole thing, but I think you'll enjoy this. Let's go ahead. And I was just going into it a little skeptical. I knew she'd like it, but for myself, I was like, is it bad? And I'm watching them going, no, this movie's freaking awesome. Yeah. It's a little cheesy, but it's fun, and it's pretty unique.
Yeah. I loved Constantine. I probably watch that once a year.
It almost has, in some ways, like where there's just a lot of backstory that's not explained, but you can figure it out as it's going.
Right.
It almost has a bit of a Stephen King movie kind of feel. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, okay, this, like there's a Papa Midnight or I think that's his name. And they like go to his place and he's like, look, I'm neutral. And there's not a whole bunch explained other than that. And you're like, okay, I get it. And it's kind of like a John Wick feel to it, where like there's this whole other world that exists in the underworld. Yeah.
And this whole world exists outside of like where everyone else exists, and you're being introduced to it. Like, here's this world you didn't know exist, and enjoy.
Yeah, and you can just sort of take it for granted. You get enough details to be able to go, okay, I see why things are happening. They make some references here and there, like, oh yeah, you screwed me over with something, or the life you took. And you're like, well, what life did he take? And then you're like, hey, you know what? I don't even really need to know. At some point you might find out, but even if you don't, it's like, oh, okay, I get it. That's part of the backstory between these people. And I don't know if that was meant to be a franchise, but I wish it was, because I would gladly go back and see what other stuff's going on in the world. But it didn't take away from the movie to have that stuff not explained. It was just kind of gave it some more flavor. Yeah.
Well, it's a comic book movie. You're a DC guy. Have you ever read Constantine?
I haven't, but last night yesterday while I was watching, I was like, I think I'm going to order some of those, through Amazon.com. I'm going to order conveniently. Yeah. Shipped to my door.
Did you watch any of the show? Like, it was a show like a couple years ago for like a season. Did you check that out at all? I didn't watch any of it.
No, I didn't even know.
Like, because I remember when the movie came out, the controversy of it was that it starred Keanu Reeves, and in the comic book, it's a British guy, like an English guy, and like that's one of the things people didn't like about it, is that they changed the story from the comic to the movie, and maybe that's where like some of the bad blood is. But like I was completely in the dark about the comic book.
Right.
And so like, but I went in the movie with such low expectations and was totally blown away. So,
well, and I think that says something too, that, we didn't know it was a comic book when we saw it. And even though probably some of the things that are referenced in the movie are things that people who read the comics would go like, oh yeah, I know what they're referring to. You can watch it without that.
Yeah.
It's good on them. And I guess as someone who didn't read the comic, I don't really care that he was supposed to be British, but
right.
Had they cast it with Paul Bettany, I'm sure it would have been amazing too. And he would have been happier to do that than that movie Legion that he did that was terrible. So that would have been fine.
Is that the one about angels?
Yeah. But as it is, it's great. And Keanu Reeves, it's a Keanu Reeves role. Like it works with him in there just being kind of Keanu Reevesy.
He doesn't have a ton of lines, and he has to save the world. That's Keanu Reeves' wheelhouse right there.
That's his sweet spot. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's that.
Yeah.
Eventually, we will review Hardcore Henry.
Yeah.
No, kids. Should we just jump into that now?
Let's go right into Hardcore Henry. We'll go into it first person. Into GoPro the movie.
Yeah, no kidding, right? So what Nick's saying is this movie is all shot from the perspective of the main character, and it's pretty much a GoPro. The camera work is pretty much GoPro. You're in his head.
It's first person shooter the movie.
Mm-hmm. And that sounds like a bad thing.
And it was.
It is what it sounds like. But
the movie was a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, overall it ends up just being fun.
Hardcore Henry is one of the most violent and fun movies I've seen in a long time. It wasn't super great, but
oh no.
But I had a lot of fun watching it. Like the kills never get lazy. Like every 5 minutes they up the ante a little bit. Like they don't seem to run out of ideas.
Yeah, they might have just gone through every video game ever and gone, how did a person get killed in this scene?
Right,
how did the person get killed? Because you just watch every kind of death happen.
Yeah.
I remember one point going like, I wonder if I'll see two people die in the same way. And then one guy got smashed into a concrete wall.
Uh-huh.
And then another guy got smashed into a concrete wall. And I was like, oh, I guess there's one. But then he just drags the guy's face down.
Oh, yeah, that made me laugh so hard. Where he drags the concrete and he scrapes his face off. Yeah. Oh man, I started cracking up.
like a cheese grater.
Yeah.
Just like,
so I guess we should talk about what this movie's about. You can take it.
A guy who's sort of a cyborg wakes up. His wife, who seems...
Oh, and spoiler alert for Hardcore Henry. We're going to spoil it because we both...
Oh, yeah. So, his wife's like, I love you.
I love you. I'm so glad you're alive again. Yeah, you're part robot now.
And then it's like, oh God, we're being invaded. It's some sort of scientific setting.
Uh-huh.
Obviously, he's some sort of project. He's a man being recreated. It's kind of like the that Bionic Man or the
RoboCop?
$70 billion man or something.
The movie has the feeling of I know you don't like RoboCop, but in RoboCop, where he's waking up as the cop for the first time, and it's all from his perspective of people talking to him and things like that. It's just like the beginning of RoboCop, where he first becomes RoboCop. I'm going to keep saying RoboCop, and
just some of that sweet RoboCop money.
RoboCop money, and that movie sucked. The remake, that was terrible.
I actually kind of enjoyed the remake.
Oh, impossible. And
it's not.
With his weird motorcycle made out of plastic, and
it was very plastic. I'll give you
that. So anyway, so he it's all first person, and his wife, he wakes up in this tank full of water, and the whole movie feels like the tutorial sequence to a video game you're about to play, but they haven't let you off the leash yet.
Yeah, and this is so true that I had written it down. And then about 15 minutes later, Nick sent me a message saying, this feels like a video game tutorial. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And it does get a bit annoying. I mean, some of the things that are bad about the movie or cheesy about the movie can be pretty annoying. Like everyone keeps telling the guy what to do. That's sort of the tutorial feel. It's like, throw a grenade down there. Hey, punch those guys.
A bunch of people together means throw a grenade.
Yeah. You kind of expect them to be like, push LB to make grenade fall downstairs.
Yeah.
And that's, maybe that could have been done better, but it doesn't really matter.
Doesn't matter, no. The plot of the movie doesn't matter at all either. It's the guy wakes up and the lady says, you're my husband. I love you. You're half robot now. We're under attack. You need to escape. And so he does, and he escapes, and then he gets to the ground. And then when he's on the ground, he runs into the actor Charlton Copley, who for about 45 minutes I could not figure out who this guy was. And then I looked it up, which is what I do. And he's the main guy from District 9.
That's what I thought.
And I was like, oh, sweet. Because he looks like David
Tim
Tennant.
Roth.
He looks like, Tim Roth. Why is he even in this movie? Tim Roth is in this movie.
So that's the funny thing. Is this guy looks, or at least he reminds me of Tim Roth. I could see the David Tennant thing too. Like if the two of them had a baby together, they'd be a scientific marvel. But also their baby would grow up to look like this guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, then Tim Roth is actually thrown in the movie, and you're like, what? Why?
He's in the movie. He literally has one line, and they replay it like 3 times.
Yeah.
His line is, "You're such a pussy," and that's what my father says.
After that,
that's what my father said to me, and so I killed a lot of people. So you should do that too. All right, paycheck, please.
I think he says something along the lines of, "I'll never do that. I'll never call you a pussy. I'll just call you Henry." And then somehow it still turns into like, "Now go kill everybody."
Yeah. But it's like when Henry's a little boy or something. So
yeah,
I don't know.
So
doesn't make Tim Roth's appearance in this movie makes no sense, and it doesn't matter. Still doesn't matter.
And through a lot of the movie, there's like, oh yeah, he has no memories. He has no memories. And about the point that I was like, oh, he's just a robot altogether. He probably doesn't have memories.
Yeah.
Then this one guy's like, you have memories. They're real. And I'm like, oh no, are they going to explain a bunch of stuff?
Right.
Because they shouldn't. And then they don't. It's just that. It's just that he gets to hear the rest of Tim Roth talking for 30 seconds.
Right, yeah.
And it doesn't matter. And then you're like, well, that was dumb. But then you go, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
And then he's killing other people again, and you're like, all right, cool. I kind of wondered if this movie might be better in 3D, or just kind of what it would be like in 3D.
I was thinking about that too, and I was wondering, like, I don't get motion sickness from like video games or watching movies. But with this one, I can imagine if it was on like a big IMAX screen, I would be like, this is too much.
Maybe. Yeah.
I will say that it's the stunt work and the action sequences are astounding. Like they're fantastic. And like the special effects, like some of them are pretty bad, but other ones,
some of them do get pretty bad. The CG is pretty bad sometimes.
Yeah, like towards the end where he uses the rocket launcher on.
What was that?
That looks so terrible.
Oh yeah, it's like sort of like gray unrendered.
Yeah,
shapes.
It's like here we're running out of money, just gray smoke, and that was the worst effect. But then, like, because at that point I was like, oh man, it's the end of this. Did they run out of money in this movie? And like, this is what the rest of the movie is gonna look like. And then you have the final sequence where he fights the army of guys, and that was great. He kills so many people. There's the one part where he's in the car with the guy. No, it's when he tracks down the guy who has the heart pump, and they're in the street, and that dude's head gets blown apart. That was awesome.
Well, and it was, and the action scenes are pretty immersive, and they are lots of fun. But there is sort of a routine to it that's kind of annoying as far as the story goes. But again, the story doesn't really matter that much.
Yeah.
But here's the plot of this movie. Guy doesn't know what's going on. Someone shows up, tells him something, dies or runs away. Someone else shows up, tells him something, dies or runs away. Like every time he meets someone who's like, I have helpful information for you, you just go, all right, when's their head going to explode? Yeah. And then it does.
Yeah, like, I have something important to tell you. Boom, he's dead. Oh, I guess we won't find out what he had to tell him.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter at all.
Doesn't matter, yeah. Totally fun movie. Very violent. Like, so over-the-top violent. But it was great. I would say it's on par violence-wise with Rambo 4.
I don't remember that movie.
That's the last Rambo where they're in Burma.
Yeah.
And that movie's over-the-top violent, but it's like almost realistic over-the-top violence, where this is more cartoonish over-the-top violence.
Yeah, this is definitely like sort of tongue-in-cheek, or very tongue-in-cheek. But yeah, it's not taking itself seriously. Yeah. The violence isn't
like
it doesn't make you feel like sick to your stomach or anything. You're just like, ha ha ha, things exploding.
The main bad guy of the movie, called Anchor or Anka, was Akan. who I thought was Viserys from Game of Thrones for the longest time. And he, for some reason, is telekinetic. Like, he's able to move things with his mind.
No explanation.
And no one else has this power, and it's just like, oh, this is something people can do.
It's just like he's the boss. The whole thing is totally a video game. But considering how many video games they've tried turning into movies, and it hasn't gone well because they've tried to make them more movie-like, this one is like, hey, look, it's a video game that's a movie. That's it. Just watch this video game happen. Yeah.
It takes, remember the movie Doom?
Yes.
Which we both enjoyed.
And also gets ripped apart more than it should, I think.
I like Doom.
Yeah, me too.
That movie, the best sequence in that movie is when it turns into a first-person shooter for like 5 minutes. And this movie is that for an hour and 36 minutes.
Yep. And it does get to the point where you're like, okay, I'm ready for this to wrap up. And as soon as that kind of, at least this is how it happened for me, as soon as I thought that, the final act or the finale kicked in. And I was like, cool. All right, there's probably about 15 minutes left of this, and it's probably all going to be nonstop craziness, and it is.
The movie knows when to get out. Like it takes, it has like these long action sequences, and then it slows down for a little bit, and then just as you're starting to get bored, the action sequences kick back in again, and it kind of just follows that pattern for an hour and a half, and then the movie ends right when it needs to.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the editing team had sort of some degree of research in like how long does a person want to feel like they're on the edge of their seat and then need a breather, because it's probably, aside from the finale, it's probably the same length. Each action scene is probably about the same length of time. Yeah. And then it gives you a little breather and kicks back in. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some sort of science or research behind that.
One thing that I don't think the movie needed, but it didn't really hurt, is the first. Like, I'd like to see this movie shot as a regular movie, like from a third person thing, like a traditional film, because the guy does a lot of stunts, like a lot of like parkour, running up the sides of buildings, that I think would be really cool to see. Like an actor actually doing it, like in Casino Royale, where that one guy that Bond's chasing and is doing all that parkour stuff. Like, there's a lot of great stunts in this movie, but it's all from like a first person perspective. And while the stunt's happening, like the camera turns away. So like the movie has a lot of clever cuts to facilitate in between stunts. And I think it would be neat to see this movie from a third-person point of view, just like it's shot as a traditional movie, so that you could see the actual stunt work that went into it a little clearer.
I really don't, because I had a similar thought in terms of like stunts and stuff, and I was like, hey, you know what? I've seen those everywhere else. I'm finally getting to see them from the perspective of the stunt person. Oh. So I kind of like enjoyed it in that way, going like, oh yeah, cool. I finally get to see kind of behind the curtain. But if you were to say that there's a special, like if you got the DVD, if anyone buys DVDs anymore, and you were to say that there's a special feature where you could see it in third person, like in a like screen in screen kind of thing, I think that could be really cool.
Yeah, that would be neat. That's a cool idea.
But I think in terms of seeing this stuff from a third perspective, I'd say you're probably seeing that in every other action movie.
I would like to see like a making of this movie, because like, did they shoot it with GoPro cameras, or is it all steady? Because the video for the most part is pretty smooth, but did they shoot it with a steady cam and whatnot? Because a lot of the times you see like the arms in front, the guy's arms in front of the camera. And I couldn't decide if that was real or if those were like CGI arms that they put in post.
That's a good question, because I guess you could just kind of record a camera flying all over the place and then throw some arms in. Right, yeah. Maybe, yeah, that's I just kind of took it for granted that it must be GoPro. I'm going to go down to some scenes where there's a lot of CGI going on.
I'm going to go down to the trivia for it on the IMDb page.
While you do that, how about we talk about the music a little bit?
The music is mostly terrible.
It's awful. It's awful. And the whole movie really wants to use the music to kind of pump things up and to give it a rhythm. But it just happens to be bad music. It's the right tempo most of the time, but it's just bad songs.
Yeah.
If you want to see a movie that does that really well, see Baby Driver.
Yeah. Baby Driver has a beautiful soundtrack.
Yeah, it has all of the rhythm that goes with the action, but with music that's actually good.
The only thing I can find in the trivia, it says the recordings from the GoPro cameras I just lost the screen, was edited to cut the hundreds of shots together into one continuous film. So I guess it was shot with GoPros.
Okay.
It looks great.
Well, then whoever's doing the parkour, man, they deserve a lot of credit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would imagine stunt people, if they watch this, must really have a lot of fun watching it.
Yeah, I would hope so. It was a lot of fun to watch. So I guess that's all I have to say about Hardcore Henry. Definitely worth checking out. Super violent, super motion sickness inducing if you're into that, but
well,
I would recommend.
There's some jokes in it that are kind of funny too.
Yeah. Oh,
like the horse music thing.
Yeah, where he goes to get on the horse. That was great.
Yeah.
Let's see. What else? There was something else I wanted to say. Oh yeah, like this movie was great to watch after Under the Skin because I watched them back to back because Under the Skin was so boring and this movie is the opposite of boring.
You got the Lady in the Water effect.
Yeah, right. So maybe I liked it a little more because I hated Under the Skin so much. Yeah, if you ever want to make sure you enjoy a movie, watch Lady in the Water, M. Night Shyamalan's Lady in the Water, and then watch anything else, and it'll seem like the best picture of the year.
And you'll probably hear us say that a bunch of times because it's a phenomenon we're very yeah, we're very familiar with.
Yeah. All right, so I think that's going to do it for the show this week. Anything to plug, Matt?
I really think, just in case nobody knows about it, Amazon.com.
It's this startup company that's really starting to make waves.
Yeah, they're probably going to be big someday.
Yeah,
check them out.
I want to tell you to check out Matt V's podcast, Movies in the AM. They just had a new episode come out a few days ago, so check that out. But other than that, I don't think I have anything. So I guess if that's the end of the reel, we'll see you next week in film.
See you next week.